The World War I simulation is a hands-on, interactive activity designed to stimulate the interest in the Great War. Students will be put into leadership positions and burdened with the same problems and circumstances faced by the real leaders in 1914. The teacher binder includes materials to organize and keep the teacher on track during the simulation. The teacher instructions include the preparation for the simulations, what materials are needed, and how to organize them so students understand what's going on. One of the topics included is how to pick your leaders. This is a very critical step. You need to try and match the personalities of your students to those of the countries they will represent. The teacher instructions also include the organization of documents for the student binders. Also included are some extras designed to jazz up the simulation. One example is the playing of intense music in the background. The students love that. You can also come up with your own ideas. The teacher notes are used to keep track of day to day, or in this case, year to year, what country will be starting in the order of turns and what phase they are in. Is it war or is it movement after war? This can be a very highly contested issue if proper notes aren't taken. Students take this simulation personal, and even though some things aren't fair, this is one area it has to be. The battle calculator is a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. It's designed so all you have to do is plug in the numbers and the ratings for each country in the battle, and it will automatically tell you the following: who the winner is, how many forces the victors have left for each country. The losers, by the way, will have nothing left. It also allows you to set the percentage of casualties inflicted by poison gas, usually from 1 to 5%. To show the futility of offensives in the World War I, the attackers lose 1 point from their rating and the defenders gain 1 point. You have a space to add those positive and negative numbers in the spreadsheet. The naval battles are calculated the same way. The student binders can be as simple as a manila folder, a 3-ring binder, or if you have a 1-to-1 laptop program, you could go all electronic documents. The student binder contains a student overview, the alliance map, the rules of the simulation, the list of leaders, the world situation summary, the intelligence report, a color map of the simulation, and top secret documents. In the back of the binders, you can place plastic folders for each period you are conducting the simulation. This allows students to keep their papers organized and separated from each period. Students are constantly referencing their binders for information during the class period. The binder templates are included in the simulation. The World Situation Summary outlines how nationalism, imperialism, industrialization, and militarism all contributed to the start of the Great War. The background of the Balkans region is also a key issue leading up to the start of hostilities. Students should now be familiar with the circumstances in the Balkans and Europe in 1914. The alliance map shows how interconnected all the major countries of Europe were. Students can visualize how difficult it would be to keep a war isolated between two countries. Students use the alliances map to develop their strategy and contemplate what reactions will occur if certain actions would be taken. This is where strategic thinking gets involved. Students must anticipate other countries' reactions. The simulation rules outline how armies can move and attack. The rules also describe how navies can move, attack, and transport troops from one place to another. Students will get a general idea of how to roughly calculate how much power a country and its allies have or can throw into a battle. Special geographic limitations are also outlined to make the simulation more realistic. The intelligence report gives students a snapshot of the military power in each country. Students can see every country's army size and rating before the war began. Students, however, will not know how many reserves a country has or how fast they can get those reserves into their army. Naval size and ratings are also disclosed. The big map is divided into countries that were involved in World War I. The Allies are gold in color, the Central Powers are light green, and the neutrals are yellow. Uninvolved countries are gray and cannot be involved in any way. Some countries are divided into zones like Germany. All the seas, oceans, and major islands are also marked. Significant geographical boundaries like the Dardanelles Strait and the Ardennes Forest create a more realistic landscape. The seas and oceans are divided into zones to create a more realistic time frame for sea movement and transport of troops. Each land zone and country are separate objects to enable you to change their color on the map, denoting a change in ownership or a change in alliance. The students love to see those colors change. After each class period, I save as a copy of the period's simulation as a year and post it to Moodle. Students then have an accurate map to plot their strategy for the next day. If you don't have Moodle or a website to post maps, you can print them out and post them outside your classroom. You could also upload them as a Google Doc. Students would then be able to print them off at any time. Top secret documents include the number of reserves that can be mobilized. Each document has an individual summary of their country. The summary contains historical information as well as background information about their objectives. Top secret documents have a list of objectives that the country needs to complete. Students will be very protective of their objectives because if other countries figure them out, they will be very limited in what they can negotiate. Other documents included in the simulation. The World Times is a set of 4 newspaper headlines from a fictitious newspaper. The first newspaper starts the simulation in 1914 when the Archduke Francis Ferdinand is assassinated in Sarajevo. The second newspaper headline highlights rising tensions between the United States and the Central Powers after the British passenger liner Lusitania is torpedoed by a German submarine. The third newspaper headline is conditional on the state of the Russian Empire. If the Russians are suffering massive casualties by 1917, they will be plunged into a civil war and drop out of the simulation. The fourth newspaper headline describes how the British intercept the Zimmerman telegram, which pushes the United States over the edge and into the war. The newspaper articles, coupled with the chronological order of the simulation, help to keep it within historical boundaries. Some situations, like the Germans and Russians fighting together, cannot be allowed. You don't want a free-for-all. Remember, this is a simulation, not a play or an unconstrained game of Risk. The declaration of war sheets are filled out by the students and handed in to the head table when students want to declare war on another country. Students must plan carefully if they are organizing a multinational force or attacking multiple locations in a particular sequence. The sheets help keep you organized, and the students get a big kick out of signing them. Alliance sheets are used by students to keep a written record of alliances formed with other countries. Alliances can be public or secret. In the beginning, students feel confident that an alliance is a bond that cannot be broken. As the simulation progresses, they realize that is not the case. As countries begin to betray one another in pursuit of their own self-interests, alliances are only as good as the word of their leader. They are not bound to uphold them, just as real countries operated during World War I. After you have printed off and organized your papers, you will need to make the most critical decisions of your simulation, picking who will be the leaders of each of the countries. Your class sizes will dictate how you will organize your students and countries. The simulation should be able to accommodate anywhere from 12 to 30 members in a period. Maybe a little less than 12 students and maybe a little more than 30 students. The best leaders are the ones you believe will be most involved. Personality also plays a role in determining who will be the aggressor nations. I have grouped some of the smaller countries together for one person to control. One of the drawbacks that students brought to my attention was that some smaller countries that were wiped out early on left the students uninvolved in the simulation. This is another area you can customize to fit your needs. The role of foreign minister in the larger countries will be a very active role in the simulation. I would put students that may be inclined to sit and watch in this role, as their leader will direct them in daily tasks of negotiating and strategizing. The final report is 4 pages of questions that can be answered from the simulation and your textbook. The first 3 pages are a mix of knowledge and higher order thinking questions along with questions answered from their experiences in the simulation. The final page lists their objectives for their country. Students are then required to explain how they tried to achieve those objectives in order to receive credit. I give them credit even if they fail to achieve their objectives, as long as their explanations prove they made a legitimate attempt to complete them. Poison gas certificates are distributed to the countries that develop poison gas at the beginning of the year they deployed it in battle. Students now have the option of using poison gas as a weapon. You control the amount of casualties in the battle calculator spreadsheet. I determine the amount of casualties based on the technology level of the country being attacked. For example, the Russians would lose closer to 5% because of their lack of industrialization. Great Britain would be closer to 1% because they are highly industrialized or more likely to have gas mass. The one aspect of the World War I history simulation that makes it so unlike a board game or video game is the human element. You don't know what your opponent is going to do, and even if you did, you wouldn't know how they're going to go about it and get it accomplished. That's the human factor in the simulation. Students are constantly problem solving as conditions can change by the minute. Remember, there is no guaranteed outcome. Students are constantly working on their persuasive skills as they try and influence others to go along with their master plan. Students are constantly trying to gain the advantage by reading ahead in the book and researching their opponents. The simulation is fully customizable in that you can add or delete certain parts to make it work for you. For example, I know one teacher in Winnipeg, Canada, that is going to add the Canadian element into the simulation to go along with his curriculum. This is the best way I have found to get students excited about history. We'd love to have you come to the World War I simulation website. You can go to www.historysimulation.com and click on the World War I simulation link. You can also email us at harms, HARMS, LLC at WMTEL.net. I can also be reached on my cell phone at 515-689-3960 and would love to answer any questions that you might have about our history simulations. We also have a World War II simulation, which is a little more complicated but based around the same ideas and same rules as the World War I simulation. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to learn about our World War I simulation. I hope you'll consider us in the future, and thanks again.